Welcome to the Reinvention Code. I'm your host, Dorinda Walker. Reinvention isn't random, it has a code. On this podcast, we'll explore what it really takes to navigate life's transitions with introspection, faith, and strategy. If you're evolving, rebuilding, or stepping into a new season, you're not just starting over, you're leveling up. Let's decode your next chapter together. Hey, beautiful people. Welcome back to another episode of the Reinvention Code. I'm your host, Dorinda Walker. Today's conversation is one I've been looking so forward to. And when I think about women who have built meaningful careers, she's navigated reinvention. She continues to show up with purpose and intention. And immediately, when I think about her, I think about the power of presence, the power of reinvention. She spent over a decade at Essence as a senior editor, helping to shape the stories that celebrate and elevate Black women. And now, as the founder of Shine Army, she continues that work in a more personal way, pouring into women and encouraging them to live boldly in alignment with who they are and who they're becoming. So what really drew me to this conversation was a recent post she shared about claiming bigger rooms. One line that stayed with me was, before the invitation arrives, you have to decide you belong there. And that really, really resonated. And when she said, tell God your goals and get in position, I knew this was a conversation we needed to have. And because this isn't just about access, it's about intention, faith, and becoming the person who's ready for the rooms they're praying for. So please welcome my guest, Charreah Jackson. So welcome.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here, Dorinda. You know, we go way back and I've been loving you a long time. So I'm honored to be here. I've been inspired by your own reinvention and what you're doing here at Reinvention Code. So thanks for having me.
You are so welcome. So your post about claiming bigger rooms really resonated with me. You talked about seeing celebrations from Essence Black women in Hollywood and how powerful it was to see women declaring that one day they would be in those rooms, right? So you said something important. Before the invitation arrives, something else has to happen first. You have to decide you belong there. And that really resonated with me because I think a lot of times we put so much doubt in where we're supposed to be. We compare ourselves to others. So what does that internal decision actually look like? And people begin to position themselves for rooms they haven't entered into yet.
Oh, I love it. And I just first thank you for the opportunity for us to dig deeper because me and you have been in some big rooms together. And so absolutely, as you mentioned, I was during Oscar weekend, I saw women were commenting on different events. And as someone, as you mentioned, who worked 10 years at Time Inc. and worked as a senior editor at Essence, I really knew what it was like to be on both sides. I know what it's like to want to be in bigger rooms, and I know what it's like to get access and what it actually looks like to curate those bigger spaces. And so I was so inspired, and I just wanted to share my little 2 cents in the conversation. But as you mentioned, we often start with wanting bigger access. We're thinking we're waiting on somebody else to give us the invitation. Somebody else. How do I get on the list is often the conversation when we actually want to reverse engineer that. But we're not waiting on anybody else's yes, because the most powerful yes is our yes. And once we take back that power from thinking we're waiting on somebody else versus actually it's on me and how can I get in position? And nothing crystallized this more to me than being in a room with the legendary mogul Oprah Winfrey and seeing her walk in, walking right up towards her, and then walking right out the door. Did not introduce myself, did not say hello. And it was because I had never fully given myself permission to own that I wanted to be in a room with her, that when the actual opportunity showed up, I did not fully receive it. And I share that story a lot when I'm giving keynotes. And so many people can relate to opportunities that, you know, they might get a last minute invite somewhere and they end up in rooms and spaces, but because you haven't already already owned, I want to be there, you don't fully show up. So you're physically in a room, but mentally, emotionally, and from a worthiness, your worthiness is not fully in that room with you. But the good thing, and like I share, we women of faith, we serve a good God, and I've seen God give the rebound. And when I went home and realized I had missed my opportunity to fully show up in that room because I wasn't declaring that I wanted to be in rooms with her, that shifted everything. Because once I made a simple decision, hey, I want to meet Oprah, I started to prepare like the woman who was preparing for her. So I said, well, when you meet her, what will you say? So for anyone else who's knowing there are bigger rooms for you, whether it's entertainment in your business, whether it's spiritual spaces, there are people and energies you want to be in, first own that. Because if you're wanting that access, guess what? The room wants you back. Because even in my own journey, I was so focused on wanting to meet a particular person. In this instance, meeting Oprah, when I fast forward a few months later, when I finally met her, because I got in action and position, I was startled by the fact that she was just as engaged and happy to meet me. And I had said, wow, I was so focused on what I thought I might get out of the opportunity that I was missing. The key factor is owning our own value. And so the reality is when you own every room is better with you in it, that requires some responsibility on you because you got to show up differently in a room if you know it's better with me there, which means I'm bringing all of me to the party. And so absolutely, it starts with our own beliefs. It starts with us writing the stories of our own life, writing the stories of our own worth, and giving ourselves those permission to move boldly like the women and men who deserve to be in expansive spaces.
So I'm going to tell you one thing that your post did for me because I went back and thought about my journey, and I often mentor others and I like to, help other women in particular. And I thought about some moments when people asked me to put them in rooms. And because I was new to the room or I was afraid to ask and call in favors, I sometimes did not bring people along. And now, after reading your post, I said, I'm never, ever going to do that again. Because if someone has the courage to ask to be in the room and I can make it happen, then that's the way that God wants to use me to help people get into those rooms. So people need to thank you for that.
I
For
also
good.
say thank you to you because I need you to give yourself credit. I've called you to help other people get in rooms. So you definitely sometimes are hosting the whole room and then navigating those nuances, right? Because it's different being the plus one and the nuances of a room, how curated, right? So it's one thing when I'm hosting and you've hosted tables, hosted events, and then also the person who, because you're generating that goodwill, gets invited to other spaces where it's like, I'm already the plus one. I'm not always able to add two more when I'm already the guest of. So there's definitely nuances there, but I would be remiss if I didn't say on behalf of hundreds, if not really thousands of rooms you have written checks for, rooms you have curated, rooms you're still hosting. Hello, HBCU Honors. So you're still very much curating spaces for people to be in proximity to powerful connections that can change your life. Because we always are only one conversation from shifting everything. And one of the ways we accelerate those conversations that change lives is to be in spaces that have powerful people who are willing to share.
Thank you. Thank you for that. I so appreciate it. I realized that my purpose in life is to use my talent and gifts to help bring other people along because I do get my greatest joy and fulfillment from seeing other people thrive, especially people who I've mentored, who have reported to me, who've gone on to do bigger and better things. That just gives me so much joy to see people fly and flourish. I've realized that that's part of what God wants me to do with my power and why he keeps blessing me. Because, the Bible says that God blesses those who blesses others. So I'm a firm believer because he's proven to me that when I bless others, my blessings are abundant. But I want to go deeper with your story about Oprah because it was powerful. Even after being told you weren't seeing enough to interview her, you later found yourself at a private gathering in her backyard, and you wrote that moment taught you to tell God your goals and get in position. So what role does intention, faith, manifestation play in the opportunities we attract?
Faith is the foundation of everything. And I want to be clear that we all are people of faith. So sometimes we were like, I'm a believer. The truth is, everybody believes in something. And so the question is, what do we believe? And so as a woman who believes in a good God, a God who loves us, a God who can do exceedingly abundantly above what I can imagine. And I'm a big dreamer. So that scripture always resonates with me. And so to your question, and thank you. You invited me to have a conversation out loud that I have never talked about this publicly, right? I often, as I mentioned, I'll talk about being in the same room with Oprah, not meeting her, making a decision, I want to meet her, and then a year later being in her backyard. But I haven't always told a story of one of the first opportunities that came up. So within a few weeks or months, I worked at Essence at the time. There was an opportunity to interview her for the movie she was working on, Henrietta Lacks. I pitched the editorial lead at the time around interviewing her. Now, sometimes, and out in transparency, did not have the most supportive relationship as I progressed in that. And it didn't start that way. So I had a manager when I came in as the intern, relationship fine. As I progressed and my visibility grew, I definitely start to get some pushback. And so even in my clients now, when I work with executives who have growing visibility, we're navigating sometimes how your visibility can be a trigger to other people, including managers. Doesn't mean you shrink. It does mean you be strategic. And so inside of that experience, I pitched to interview Oprah. And not only did she tell me no, she said, you're not senior enough. Now, was I senior editor at the time, literally senior in my job title? Yes. Was I managing an entire department? Yes. And so I could talk about the ways I could push back on man, or I could stay surrendered to God. And so I just knew, just because that door didn't open in that season, I knew that God still heard my prayer. And so I didn't let that stop me, because I knew no man has the power over any of us and the desires we have for ourselves. And so fast forward to your point, I met her in person at the premiere of that movie, Henrietta Lacks. Shout out to a girlfriend of mine who's an incredible journalist, Alicia Quarles, invited me as her plus one. Y'all, your network can open doors that can blow you away. And so fast forward a few months later, I get the opportunity to go to attend Oprah's book launch, which she hosted at her Montecito, California estate. And so I'm literally sitting in her guest house, which is beautiful. She's got framed pictures of her and Nelson Mandela, her and Dr. Maya Angelou. And we sit outside, and it's a group of us who are able to interview her. And so fast forward, what a year. So it went from being in the room, not feeling worthy, leaving, to getting clear on what was possible, that my biggest goals still seem really small to a big God, and then watching how it all unfolds. So in my strength, I didn't do it by myself. In my strength, I thought, okay, let me pitch this opportunity. Got shut down real bad. But in my faith, it grew me. And literally, I would not have even had the courage to ask for it to be that big. I just wanted to meet her, let alone sitting in her backyard was the next level, which was a God wink and a God level manifestation of what was possible.
I love that. I'm a big believer in manifestation, but I loved how you turned that no into a yes. So let's talk about understanding how to build that ecosystem. So you talked about how many high profile rooms operate as ecosystems, right? Shaped by sponsors, partners, and advocates. What do people often misunderstand about how access to those spaces really works?
Yes, I love this question. The biggest thing people misunderstand about high level, high profile rooms, high profile relationships, that it truly often is a mixture of both business and relationship. And most people are trying to approach it transactionally. And so the biggest shift we want to make, when you want to treat it like the ecosystem it is, it also means never take it personal when you don't get invited to a space. Because one thing that can happen, we talked about the people who might say, I want to be in this room. But there are also those of you, and I've been in that space too, where you see something on, so especially now everything's public, you see something on social media and you're like, why wasn't I invited? And so the biggest thing I want us to do is detach our personal worth from external rooms in these rooms. Your value is not dictated by what guest list you're on. Your value is dictated by how good of a person and the impact you choose to make. And so that's the biggest thing, because often there's way more qualified, successful, beautiful people who should be in every room. So just, yes, you're worthy to be in every room. Knowing you're worthy of being in every room doesn't mean, even in my case, there's still things that are still sitting on my list. However, I do not internalize when it wasn't my time yet, because that can be a waste of energy, and I don't take it personal. And don't let other people do that too. Oh, why? I see you weren't invited to this brunch, or I see your girls went here. I do take my personal feelings. And if you ever do feel like there's someone you know personally, you can ask the question, because you can ask feedback. I've done that before. Hey, how did y'all curate that experience? And they might tell you what it looks like and what it feels like. So one of the things I mentioned for a high profile room, like take, for instance, some of the Oscar events or entertainment events, often those seats is it's a set amount of seats. B, they're going to start with the most connected to whatever the award. So whatever room you look at, there's going to be people who are getting awards in a room, people who are funding the room. So that's where someone like a Dorinda, who's got a strong track record in both being a sponsor and working directly with sponsors to curate rooms, you could be answering this question because you do this a lot. And so I'm sure you've had the experience where people are like, can I come to some of the events you're producing? And it's more of a question of, A, how can I add value to that room? So strategically, what value do I add, and how do I position myself that this is a room where I can add value? So that can look a lot of ways. That can look like you providing to volunteer, you providing services, or you just saying, here's a way that I am a fit to the people that are in that room. So we really want to, A, take the emotion out of it and be intentional, but also be strategic. And so when I've been on both sides, I'll stop there. I could talk about this all day. I feel like I'm going long.
No, it's good. It's good. When I was in corporate America, when I wasn't at a very senior level, but I was getting invited into rooms where there were really senior level people, the women who had so quote unquote bigger titles than me would throw me shade because they would wonder, how did Dorinda get into that room, but I wasn't invited.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's because I've never approached or interacted with people based on my title. It was always based on me as a person and not my title and what I could or could not bring to the table. It was just being my authentic self. And I think sometimes people will lead with, this is my title, or, I've done this, that, and the other, I deserve to be in a room. Well, some people might not think you deserve it based on how you interact with them. So I think the whole point of me saying this is developing authentic and genuine relationships with people will help you to get in those rooms.
That's when I tell you, I'm sitting here nodding my head, yes. And I know people are listening like that is the key, because even in my own professional journey, and it still happens, we got to separate when you're anointed for something and where you're appointed for something. And sometimes people who are appointed, which is about title, are looking at those of us who are assigned to a room that no man can touch it. And so I would definitely agree with you. And when I look back at my career, like I ended up being the only person. So the $100 million movie Girls Trip that had Jada Pinkett Smith, Regina Hall, Tiffany Haddish, Queen Latifah at Essence Festival. It filmed at Essence Festival. And somehow we go to a screening of the movie before it came out, the Essence staff. And I ended up being the only person who worked at Essence who's featured in the movie Girls Trip. How did that happen? And I tell you, it's what Dorinda just said. It was the power of conversation. So fast forward, we're at Essence Festival. I see Malcolm Lee. I see Will Packer, the writer, producer, and director of the film. I didn't even know they were filming this movie. This was a year before it came out. I see them. I walk up. I just introduce myself. And I'm a big Malcolm Lee fan because he did one of my favorite movies, Best Man. And then he did the sequel, and this was before Best Man Chapters. Now, any Best Man fan will tell you, Best Man the original and Best Man sequel, two different genres. The first one, rom-com. The second one was a tragic movie that killed one of the main characters. So all of a sudden, I see Malcolm Lee. I walk up, introduce myself. I tell him, I mentioned, I work at Essence, but also what the hell about this sequel? And we laugh, we talk, and I just genuinely relation. Don't think anything about it. Fast forward, they ended up filming one of the panels that I interviewed Morris Chestnut, and they were filming during that segment. It ends up in the movie. But I just say that to say, I only think the only reason Malcolm Lee even knew my name, was because I introduced myself. I didn't have the most senior title at the company. I didn't even know they were filming for this movie. Like, we heard about it, but I had no idea what that moment would be. And now fast forward on IMDb, I'm listed for this movie that just started with saying hello. And so to your point, it's not about chasing a title or status. It's really about being the type of person who just is a good person, but also be a good guest. When you see people you want to connect with, heart to heart, let them see you, be genuine. And Malcolm might say, I had a little bit of an attitude, but I was honest with him. I was authentic, as Dorinda shared, and it's transformative. And the last thing on this point is be a good guest. So I have a go-to gift that I give. People invite me to events. I bring a gift. I tell them thank you. I also try and post on social media and support the event that they invited me to and acknowledge the fact that I was a guest of them, because being a good guest can go a long way to nurturing that relationship and being grateful and showing the person who brought you to the party that you're grateful that they brought you in the room.
I love that. So that's a good segue into my next question, because many people understand that relationships and networks matter, right? But they still feel uncomfortable reaching out. And I know I struggled with this. So, asking for introductions or seeking help. And some people even carry a deep-seated belief that asking for help is a sign of weakness. And for me, because of my upbringing and the belief that I couldn't count on anyone but myself, this was something I really struggled with. And I think if I'm honest, I can say I still struggle with it. And I have to force myself to ask people for help. So what advice would you give to someone who struggles with networking or asking for support, when in reality, if they don't ask, the answer is always going to be no?
You better say that, Dorinda, if you don't ask. And the truth is, that's the worst no, because we're often like, I don't want to hear other people tell me no. But in order for other people to tell me no, I first have to stop telling myself no. And so this is definitely learning to ask is a muscle I have had to build. And as a Black woman from the South, right, all the things, I historically come from people who did not live in a culture or community where they felt always they had access to ask for help. And yet, if you read the word of God, the word ask shows up a lot in the word, and it shapes our realities. And so I would say for those who have struggled, like me, like Dorinda, you are in good company, so welcome. And also know the biggest life and your assignment requires that you ask, because the reality is, if we think about prison and what's considered one of the harshest forms of punishment, it's solitary confinement, to be by yourself. And yet we have many people who are walking around free physically, but living our lives like we're in solitary. We don't want other people to know really what we're up to, and we don't want to ask. And as someone who's 5 years in business full time for myself, the only way I can have the impact on the planet, the only way I can have the income to keep going as a business owner is to ask for the referrals, to ask for the opportunities. And it is not a sign of weakness to ask. It's actually a sign of power, because you're honest enough with yourself and you're empowered enough to know that I'm not meant to do this on my own. Because truthfully, if you can do everything on your goal list, everything on your vision board, everything that you're dreaming about by yourself, you are not dreaming big enough. Because everything in life is designed to be supported. The plants are not doing it by themselves. The animals are not doing it by themselves. And as God's greatest creation, as human beings, we were not designed to do it by ourselves. We see it in Genesis. It is not good for man to be alone. And so we're working on things by ourselves. We are out of alignment. And I want to say it's not your fault. Many of us were socialized not to ask for help. Many of us have trauma when we did ask for help from the people who might not have been as supportive. But one of the things I want you to do is give yourself permission to go for more no's. You should be trying to apply. One of the goals I have quarterly for myself is to pitch at least 100 opportunities, to ask for a total of opportunities, whether it be podcasts like this, whether it be media, speaking opportunities, whether it be new clients, meetings, but to get in the habit of asking, because then you give yourself an opportunity pipeline. But if you never ask for anything and then you ask one person, that's a lot of pressure on that one ask. And then they say no. And you're like, see, nobody helps me. You only ask for one person. But when you ask 10 people, you ask 20 people, you ask 100 people, it takes the pressure off of that one person being the connect, but it also builds the muscle, because you remind yourself, just because this door didn't open doesn't mean I'm not knocking the next time. And one of the biggest shifts for me is I can't control who says yes. I had a deal with a Fortune 50 finance company and got the approval from the executive. They connect me to the procurement center, which means the people who will process payment. We rocking, we rolling. I'm waiting just to sign the contract and send the invoice. We got a project plan. And I got ghosted. He did not answer a nan email after that. And they had some corporate, I could see in the news, they were having corporate shifts with the company. So I understood, but I still was like, yo, can you just write me back? But more than that, that opportunity taught me, because I took it hard at the time. Like, oh my gosh, this deal did not go through. But I did not celebrate all the ways I had shown up to get there. So in that moment, I reset. I don't just celebrate an outcome I can't control, which is someone saying yes. I celebrate every time I show up. So I want you to, for those who've struggled with asking, I want you to celebrate asking. In my community, our clients hear me say it all the time. The send is the win. You press and send, you asking for the opportunity, you submitting your application. That is the win, because that's you witnessing to yourself, I believe in you. And that is the most powerful gift you ever give yourself, is to see yourself show up for yourself. Because then it builds your confidence, it builds your worthiness, and you keep going. So if this person doesn't say yes, they don't hold the power. I just keep knocking until I get to the right door. So a lot of times when asking feels foreign, it's because you're not doing it enough. And the more you do it, the more you get comfortable doing it. And I say this as someone who struggled for years, who grew up being by myself a lot as a kid, playing by myself, comfortable being by myself. And I realized I could not have the highest impact. I could not have my biggest dreams and desires if I didn't learn how to speak up and ask people and let people in, because people do want to support you, but you won't know that if you don't give them the chance to show up.
Yeah. And you know what? I used to get bothered by the no early in my career, but now I see the no as an opportunity for me to be more strategic. So if this person says no, how do I get to the person who's going to say yes? Or how do I update my pitch so I can get a yes next time? So the no's don't bother me as much. I don't take them personal, because for me, that's God telling me you need to prepare better. So
Mm.
that's how I look at it. I don't look at it as something that's detrimental to me or my worth. It's something, there's a lesson in it, in the no, that God wants me to receive. And that's how I think about it. So the Reinvention Code is all about helping people who are going through a period of reinvention or transformation. And when you're going through a season of transition or transformation, a lot of times there's isolation, right? You know, for many people who experience this season of reinvention, where their environment changes and it can feel surprisingly isolating, how do you move through that season when the path isn't fully visible yet?
Yeah, I love this topic and I love this question, because I've had to reinvent myself several times, transitioning out of corporate, starting my own business, moving back to my hometown from after living in New York for 12 years, moving back to Atlanta, expanding in industries. And I was a magazine girlies. And when the last time most of y'all have bought a magazine, right? And so I've continued to have to reinvent and expand with the speed of technology. So in those moments where I am navigating, it becomes so important to ground yourself. There's so much you can't control, so it becomes even more important in seasons of transitions to control what we can control. When you are off of automatic, when the life you've known for years, when the job, the relationship has shifted, it becomes important that you show up for yourself in those moments. So the things that have supported me in seasons of reinvention is having my routine. One of the things I have consistently done for more than 5 years is my gratitude journal. Every day I'm writing 5 things that went well today. And it helps me to focus on what's working than to look outside of myself and look for grounding. And so it's so important that you have a routine. I meditate, I journal, I move my body with intention every day. Now I got gym friends. I go to the gym enough now that I got gym friends. What? But it started from needing to stay grounded and stay in my body and do things that made me feel alive and well. The other thing that's really important, and you talked about it, there is the power of being with self. However, I think sometimes as women, especially in transition, we can go too far where we're spending too much time alone because we don't want everyone to see our reinvention. And one of the things that has accelerated new chapters of abundance for me is letting people in with me. Not everybody has to be in the cocoon, but you don't want to do it completely isolated. So have your prayer partners. Coming through the pandemic, I had a girlfriend. We started out, we prayed every day, then we went to 3 days a week. But I was consistently in community in different seasons of change that kept me uplifted, kept me grounded, and kept me motivated. So this is not a to-done board behind me. This is not a to-do board. This is not a vision board. This is a done board. And so one of the things I did in my space as I was navigating and expanding was I created boards that show me. I have a receipt board where I printed out emails that affirmed who I was to me. I printed pictures where I felt my most beautiful. I visualized who I was because I needed to saturate my mind and my eyes in the bigness of who God said I was. And I needed to see it outside myself because it can feel shaky when you're starting something new. When you're leaving a comfort zone, you can feel like, oh my gosh, I'm starting from zero. And you are not starting from zero. You're bringing every lesson that you have ever encountered. You're bringing every experience that you've been through. All of those things have sharpened you. So I want you to know if you are reinventing right now, you are not starting from zero. And I want you to remember who you are. And if you need to create resources that support you to do that, do that.
You know what? I love that. So in my house, I have all my awards around the house. I have pictures of me in various magazine articles or whatever. And I remember this handyman came to my house and he was like, wow, there's a lot of stuff about you in here, as if I had a big ego. And I said, because sometimes I need to remind myself of who I am.
I love
And
it.
so I love that you have that board behind you because sometimes we need a reminder because, you know, when you've accomplished great things and you're transitioning to a new chapter, there's a lot of fear and doubt that could come along with that. But you should always remind yourself of who you are and what you're capable of. So love that.
Yes.
So we both have something in common. We took the leap into entrepreneurship. You know, we made a successful transition from a corporate career into building our own business. And that leap could be both exciting and uncertain for sure. But what are the biggest mindset shifts you had to make when you moved from corporate into entrepreneurship?
The biggest mindset shift you must make to be successful going from working from somebody else to working for yourself is this. Waiting. The silence of waiting for somebody else to tell you what you can do, what you can't do, how big you can dream, right? And so literally I'm a big proponent of being supported in your entrepreneurship journey. So I say that to say I've done the Goldman Sachs 1 Million Black Women program. I graduated last year. I'm currently in Chase Open for Business program where you have a financial advisor who is from Chase who's supporting you in your business. And I say that I've shared with both of them my action plan, my 12-month plan. And I've had 2 different advisors ask me a similar question. And that question is, do you think this is realistic? Like showing how big of a growth I'm planning to have in the next year. They're like, is this possible? And I answered, yes, it's possible. It's a stretch for me. It's not a strain, and it's more than possible because I run the numbers. I'm saying that here is because as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, your vision and your faith is the foundation of a successful business. So the biggest leap in deciding that I will work for myself, I will hire myself, I will honor that I have what it takes to run a business. And breaking news, every person who has a corporate job has a skill set that could run a business. Not every person should be running a business because it does require you to show up. They have to be able to make more from what you're doing than what they're paying you to be able to afford you, which is already a signal that you have skills that can be compensated and paid. The paycheck you already have is evidence that you have a marketable skill. I know I jumped topics, Dorinda, but I just wanted to put that out there. But the biggest mindset shift it requires is A, that you believe that it is possible for me to make money with the gifts I have, and B, to not wait on anybody else to set the standards of how big you can go.
You know, it's funny. One of my reinvention codes is your title is your container, but your skills and talent are your currency because
Mm,
they're transferable, right? I've seen so many people get caught up in their corporate titles, and when that title is gone, they don't
mm,
know who they are. And so that's one of the biggest challenges with transitioning in career because you associated your identity to a title instead of who you are and what your skills are. And I think, you know, this topic is going to really hit home for some people because so many Black women in particular are, you know, losing their jobs and they're trying
mm,
to figure out, can I make it as an entrepreneur? And I would say the biggest lesson I had to learn and mindset shift is that I don't have a team to support me, and I
mm,
didn't have that in the beginning, right? So before I had an administrative assistant, and there was a digital team, and there was, you know, a creative team, and there was this and there was that. And so
mm.
when you're on your own, you have to figure it out and then build until you can afford to hire the team that you need. So that was the
Absolutely.
biggest mindset shift for me.
Yeah, that I'm so glad you mentioned that, Dorinda, because it's so important that we take the pressure off of ourselves. And back to an earlier question you asked, the biggest mindset shift and habit shift we have to make as business owners is getting comfortable making the ask. Because you're constantly asking. What separates a hobby from a business is sales. And when you're the CEO, unless you're hiring somebody else to do the selling, or we ourselves will learn to do the selling. So absolutely, on my journey to launching and growing a business, that sales muscle, that I am a salesperson, had to be an identity shift I had to make as well.
Okay. Love that. So we're going to shift from career to something that's really deeply personal. I know that you've had a personal battle with cancer, and
Mhm.
experiences like that often shift how you see success and relationships. What did that season of your life teach you about what truly matters?
Yeah, and thank you for the question. And I'm at this tender shift in my life where I've spent more years of my life as a cancer survivor than I have when I was diagnosed, because I was diagnosed when I was 19 years old, and now I celebrated last year 20 years since my last treatment. And so I have has shaped me in ways that I don't even probably always have the words for. But the greatest gift, and I don't wish it on anybody, however, it did make me urgent with how I've lived my life. When people say, oh my gosh, you're so bold or you're so confident. And sometimes it's not that I'm more bold or I'm more confident. I'm just more honest and clear that I take life as a gift. I'm aware that we won't always be here, so why not try? So I'm willing to try new things. The last thing I failed, I went for scuba diving certification last year, and it didn't work out for me. I did the day one. I could float for 10 minutes and swim 10 laps, but you had to put the big machine on and go underwater. It didn't work out for me. But I say that to say, I tried the thing, right? If
Yeah.
anything, having to face the reality of, wow, this could potentially take me out, it gave me a higher appreciation for life and an urgency. So I don't waste my time doing things I don't want to do. I don't spend a lot of time with people I don't want to be around. I'm selective in that way because I take the gift of life as a serious gift, but I don't take myself that serious.
Yeah, I love that. So speaking of spending time with people, you and I, whenever we get together, we talk about our dating lives, right? Because we're
Yes.
both single real women. And I've shared that I found it challenging, because I haven't dated in over 30 years, right? And today's dating scene, it looks different. I was dating in the late 80s and 90s. So for women who have built successful careers and full lives, what principles should guide dating, right? Today, in this world of social media, instant gratification, it's really becoming hard. And then there's narratives of men versus women. It's just crazy. What narratives and what dating advice should we focus on without compromising our peace or our standards?
Yeah, I love it, and it's so important we feed all of ourselves. And I'm a lover girl, so I have been in long relationships. My longest relationship was 7 years, and he had asked my dad for his blessing for us to get married, and I knew I didn't want to marry him, so I needed to go ahead and get up out of there. And then last year, I did a post on social media talking about how I had gone on 31st dates since my last relationship 3 years ago. And so I am a lover girl. I think dating is I won't say is a form of free therapy, but it is a mirror. It definitely shows you a lot around yourself, what's important to you, shows you a reflection of the culture we're in. But the biggest thing I would say for someone who is like, hey, I'm interested, I desire companionship, I desire potentially a partner, I would say do not let the rhetoric and the stories you're seeing change what's possible for you. One of the things that's so important is that we protect our faith and we protect what we believe in. I will block social media accounts. So in transparency, the shade room is blocked for me. Now, nobody in the shade room is trying to post me or talk to me, but I did it. So even when my friends are sharing posts from that platform, I can't even see it because I know for me, it's like potato chips for me. I can't just look at that one post. I'm going to look up 15 minutes later and then I watch all, it starts good, but then it's going to be some crazy stuff that really makes me feel like, wow, it will impact the faith of what I believe is possible. So I think the first thing is curating your energy and also giving yourself permission to be supported. Like I've had extraordinary dating experiences. I've gone on a date and a man cashed at me $400 on a first date because he's like, I knew it took you time and energy. You look great. I just want to say thank you for showing up, right? I've had men do extraordinary things, send car services, and the types of things that you would think like, is that even possible? And I'm like, it's possible. And this is first dates. These are not men who are my man. And I've had men fill up my gas tank. So I know that it is possible to have exciting, interesting experiences in your dating life. And so I encourage women to protect your peace, but also be supported. The same way I've invested in coaching in other areas of my life. I have business coaches. I've worked with dating coaches before. And so being open to have support because this is an area of our life that impacts so many things. It's a very intimate, sacred experience to let people into your heart, to let people into your bed, to let people into your house. And so you want to be extremely discerning. You do not have to compromise, and you deserve to be supported in a category that most of us never had a class on dating. Most of us never were giving real tools and tactics of what it takes to be successful. Now you have a different experience, someone who was happily married for many decades. And so I am so fine with you keeping your standards high. As a business owner, I do push myself to stay open to dating because I know I can easily get too heavy into the work mode and not always keep that open space. So if I go more than 2-3 weeks and someone hasn't asked me for my number or on a date, I'm like, okay, how do I shift my energy? Where am I going? How am I staying open to be in environments that nurture me? So I did one of those vision board bingo boards this year. Instead of the traditional vision board, I did the vision bingo. And I have on there 52 date nights. And so it's not always just going on a date with a man. Like one of the date nights I checked the box was going to my dad is 75. He still like to go out. I go to the club with my dad. and we have a good time. He's dancing, I'm dancing. We have a good time. So that counts towards it because I'm in the energy of being open. I'm feeling my most feminine, amazing self. So I know I went long, but don't be afraid to set goals in your personal life the same way we set business goals. You deserve it.
I love that. So, I'm a TikToker. I love TikTok. And I'm always seeing women who say, I wish I had a man, but all men aren't this or aren't that. And then I say to myself, and if you pray about it, you cannot in turn say that all men are this and that, because if you pray about it, you have to have faith that God is going to deliver the right person at the right time.
Mm-hmm.
So I always try to stay away from the negative aspects of what I see online and what people are saying, because I know for a fact that your experience is not the same as my experience. And so, I think a lot of times we have to do the inner work
Mm-hmm.
to really understand, and if we're ready for what we're praying for.
Say it,
So,
sis.
yeah. So I think, I'm going to have I think when I take this podcast on the road, I think we're going to have this whole thing of conversation around dating. Because I just think it's interesting now that I'm, a single woman and I'm seeing what's happening in the world. And I'm like, I'm sure there are some negative sides because I hear horrible stories, but there's some beautiful sides that I think don't get told.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm very interested in that and the psychology of dating and all of it. Let's talk about wisdom from your journey, because when you reflect on the different chapters of your life, from corporate leadership to entrepreneurship, your health journey, and the personal growth that comes with all of it, what wisdom do you feel most compelled to share with women who are stepping into their next chapter?
I love this question. And what I most feel compelled to share is shine anyway. Show up for yourself, show up fully for the life you were created to live, and live every day like this is your day. Like, it's very trendy now. You see it on TikTok, IG, right? Being her, that girl. And the truth is, every woman has it within her to be the most fulfilled, amazing version of her life, and you deserve it. So that's the thing I say to women with urgency. This is your one life. Live it like it is. And that looks like giving yourself permission to dream bigger, play bolder, ask bigger, because the quality of your life will live in the quality of your questions of yourself and the quality of the questions you ask of other people, the quality of your conversations and the quality of your connections. And so our conversation started literally from the power of showing up. Right. I shared a story online, talked about things I hadn't talked about. It led to Dorinda like, girl, come on the podcast. And here we are. And so I just want all of us to really take advantage. Now, specifically, because of the power of technology in this season, I want more of us to own our stories and to share our stories. It's so important now. To Dorinda's point earlier, we often will see negative, sensational things get a lot of attention. It's not about getting every reality TV show canceled. It is about more powerful, impactful women speaking up, because there is an imbalance right now where you're seeing a lot of loud people who have a fraction of the experience. And then I go onto the LinkedIn and the IG of a lot of powerful women. They don't update, they don't share, they don't post. And so then you have these people who are loud creating this narrative around what's possible and what's available, when we know many super successful women who are successful in marriage, successful in their businesses, successful in health. Like, there's so many of us. And so my biggest challenge to every woman is I'm compelled to say, sis, show up. Let us see you. It is your season to shine.
I love that, love that, love that. Okay, well, unfortunately, we are coming to the end of the podcast, but I always close with the reinvention codes from our discussion. So, when life pushes you into a new chapter you didn't plan for, what's the code you live by now?
Nicole, and this is from my mom, delay is not denial. So when you find yourself in those new seasons, and I've come to her, it didn't happen. She said, delay is not now. So I want you to stand on the word of who you are, who God says you are, and know that all things are possible. And just because it hasn't happened yet doesn't mean it's not happening.
I love that. Delay is not denial. And you know what? I can relate to that so much, because there's a lot of times when I thought a denial was it, but it just was a delay. And if you look at my life, that's all it was, right? So I love that. And your mom is super smart. So thank you for sharing your mom's wisdom. So when it comes to relationships and the people you allow close to you, what's the code you follow?
I do the big B3. The B3 is 1, big heart, 2, big mind, 3, big spirit. So I
Oh,
look at not only is someone smart, but are they loving? Not only are they loving, but do they serve the God I serve? Because when those things are in alignment, and when I look at my closest relationships, we all have that in common. Where they're smart, brilliant, spiritual people who we can look, lock, and with a few words, our energy matches.
love that. All right. And so when you think about faith, purpose, and trust in the path ahead, what's the code you live by?
Oh, I love this. When I think about faith, purpose, and trusting the path ahead, the key word in all of that was trust. And I would say the code I live by, guy, is simply not just believe in God isn't the code, believe God. So I have to stay in my word and believe that God loves me, that God created me, and God lives in me. And that gets me through. Well, to not stay grounded in my fleshly, oh my gosh, but to believe that God said that I get to have that exceedingly abundantly above all things.
I love that. So, Charreah, thank you for sharing your life, your experience, your wisdom, your insights with us today. And to our listeners, if this episode resonated with you, please be sure to share, to comment, and make sure you follow Charreah. Charreah, where can people find you?
Yeah, you can follow me at Charreah on all social. And then I'll believe in being a good guest. So I want to leave you all with something. If you go to shineshortcuts.com, you get my free guide. I'm giving you my 7 best tips so that you can shine, show up powerfully in rooms, show up powerfully with sharing your story, both online and offline. So at shineshortcuts.com, you can get our free guide, my 7 best secrets. I give a little more tea of some of my strategy from Oprah's house and beyond of how we can really shine in this new era.
Love that. Thank you. And to my guests, until next time, as always, I wish you much peace, much joy, and many blessings. Thank you for listening to the Reinvention Code. If this episode resonated with you, share it with someone who's stepping into their next season. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss a conversation. Remember, reinvention isn't random, it has a code. I'll see you next time.